Hosepipe bans are to be introduced in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight from Friday next week. Southern Water, the region's water company, says the decision was necessary to protect local rivers, which have become severely depleted by the extended dry weather. A hosepipe ban has already come into force on the Isle of Man. The Met Office has said that the period between January and June this year was the driest in England since 1976. So let's have a look at the rainfall in the Isle of Man. On the Isle of Man, 28.9 millimetres of rainfall was recorded compared to an average of 62.9 millimetres, for the same time year before. That's approximately 50% less than usual. Now, let's have a look at Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight in Hampshire, actual rainfall recorded this year was 36.9 millimetres compared to the long-term average of just shy of 53 millimetres. And river flows are 25% lower than they should be for July. This is equivalent to losing more than 25 million bathtubs of water, according to Southern Water. They also say the area is experiencing one of the driest years on record for the past 131 years. Katerina Vittozzi reports.
We've had water warnings and now official restrictions. The hosepipe ban across the Isle of Wight and Hampshire will affect millions of customers. Southern Water says it's because below average rainfall has hit water supplies, risking precious habitats and wildlife that depend on the rivers. Here on the Isle of Man, where a ban came in force today, it's the shrinking reservoir they're worried about.
We've had a bit of a double jeopardy situation where there's very little water coming into the reservoir now, and the demand has gone up by about 20%. So what happens is that the reservoir started to drop quite steeply, and it's now approaching 65%. In the unlikely event that it doesn't rain again until October, by the middle of September we would start to be in a serious situation.
Officials here estimate that the hosepipe ban could help reduce consumer demand by somewhere in between 5 and 10%, and that restrictions will stay in place until they can guarantee water supply. Of course, what would help end restrictions earlier is if there is some significant rainfall. But remember, we're only halfway through summer, and typically August is one of our driest months. On this island, water supply is finite. Some people have already turned to storing rainwater.
We've only got a limited amount, and when it does rain, not all of it obviously finds its way into the reservoirs. So we have to be very careful with our water. But having one of these is ideal for the garden.
We do have to preserve it for us, because if we're going to have a mild winter, then it's going to affect us a lot.
We know human-made climate change is affecting weather patterns, making extreme weather more likely, their impact more intense. Today, land dried out by record-high temperatures fueled yet more fires. New climate modelling showed last week's heatwave was statistically almost impossible without global warming.
We found that the 2022 event, the temperatures associated with the 2022 event, is at least 4 degrees Celsius higher, and that has been made 4 degrees Celsius more due to climate change. And the frequency with which such events could happen in the current climate is at least 10 times more likely as compared to a world without climate change.
Water companies say there is no direct risk to customer drinking supply. But as more hosepipe bans begin, it's clear restrictions now may help avoid shortages later. Katerina Vittozzi, Sky News on the Isle of Man.